Under the harsh glow of a sterile examination room, a fragile body, barely 110 pounds, told a story no performance ever could. In that moment, the question became unavoidable. What painful reality had Michael Jackson, once the most commanding presence on Earth, concealed beneath a carefully constructed exterior? The forensic findings released in 2009 did more than mark the passing of an icon. They stripped away illusion and revealed a private struggle he spent decades trying to keep out of view, one shaped by repeated cosmetic interventions, quiet suffering, and the relentless cost of chasing an impossible ideal. Beneath the smooth surface the world admired lay a cycle of fixation, sorrow, and physical sacrifice. What appeared flawless to the public masked a man burdened by grief and driven by an unforgiving vision of perfection. The report read not as a clinical conclusion alone, but as an unintentional confession of a life lived under extraordinary pressure. Its details stunned audiences worldwide, forcing many to reconsider the distance between the image they adored and the reality he endured. As we begin this deeper exploration into the truth behind the mask, take a moment to stay with the story. If you find value in uncovering the human reality behind history's most powerful icons, consider liking, commenting, and subscribing. What follows may not change Michael Jackson's legacy, but it may change how you understand the man who lived it. There are stories, quiet ones, passed along by those who worked closest to him, that on certain mornings, Michael Jackson would stand alone before a mirror for long stretches of time. He wasn't rehearsing choreography. He wasn't humming melodies. He was simply looking. The unforgiving light traced every angle of his face, a face he increasingly struggled to recognize as his own. He once said, almost casually, "I've always been a perfectionist." But beneath that word lived something far more fragile. A fear that if he ever stopped being that Michael Jackson, the one the world loved, he might stop being loved at all. By the late 1970s, Off the Wall had lifted him into a new stratosphere of fame. To the public, he was radiant, a young black man with warm skin, soft curls, wide eyes, and a smile that felt both shy and electric. Yet away from the applause, another reality unfolded. Friends recall a man drained by exhaustion, unsettled by the image staring back at him from television screens. What he saw wasn't an artist at ease with himself. It was a face that felt unfinished, just a small change. He would say, just enough to look better under the lights. But after every small adjustment, the mirror returned someone thinner, sharper, and further removed from the boy people had first fallen in love with. At first, the marks were discreet, barely visible, carefully concealed beneath makeup. The world noticed nothing, but Michael felt everything. Each incision carried weight, not just on his skin, but on his sense of self. The reflection no longer felt like home. It became an image shaped by expectation, not acceptance. His fears of judgment, comparison, irrelevance settled into the smallest details of his face. Slowly, the mirror stopped being a place of reassurance and turned into something more confining, a space where he felt trapped by who he was expected to be. Fame gave him reach beyond imagination, yet quietly stripped away his ability to rest inside himself. Behind the sequined jackets and impossible footwork was a man burdened by the demand to never fall short. He once described sitting alone in a dark studio, lights turned off, listening only to his breathing. Many assumed it was artistic ritual. Those close to him understood it differently. It was a moment of grounding, an attempt to confirm that beneath the spectacle, he still existed. As the years passed, his attention to physical detail intensified. The nose narrower, the chin sharper, the complexion more even. Surgeons later said he carried reference photos, altered images, and would point to them, saying, something like this, maybe better. Outsiders speculated about dissatisfaction with his skin, but the reality was more painful. Michael had vitiligo, a condition that caused his skin to lose pigment unevenly. Under harsh stage lighting, those patches stood out relentlessly, reminding him that his body was changing without his consent. Makeup stopped being enough. What followed were choices made quietly, urgently, not from vanity, but from vulnerability. What audiences never saw were the nights afterward, the bandages, the stillness, the silence of sitting alone, staring at his reflection and asking questions he never voiced aloud. One physician later recalled a moment before surgery when Michael broke down, terrified that when he woke up, he wouldn't know the person looking back at him. And yet, afterward, he would smile, almost with relief, as though he had moved one step closer to becoming what the world required of him. This was the unspoken cost of fame. What began as an effort to protect himself from relentless scrutiny slowly became a surrender of freedom. The procedures that once felt like armor turned into restraints. Fans saw an eternal icon. Michael saw a face he could never set aside. Over time, the line between Michael Jackson the star and Michael the man faded so completely that even he seemed unsure where one ended and the other began. There is a story, often repeated, that he kept a photograph of himself as a young man nearby, a quiet reminder of who he once was. Whether it's true hardly matters. What matters is the distance he felt growing between that image and the reflection staring back at him. Each attempt to reclaim himself only seemed to push him further away. Perhaps the peace he was searching for was never something the mirror could offer. Every procedure touched more than skin. It reached into the spirit. And when the stage lights dimmed and the cheers dissolved into silence, Michael faced a truth that no amount of perfection could erase. It would never be enough. Reflected in that mirror was not just a cultural legend, but a man still searching, quietly, painfully, for the version of himself that existed before the world demanded so much. People often say there are obsessions that don't destroy a person all at once, but quietly hollow them out from within. For Michael Jackson, that obsession went by a deceptively noble name: perfection. In one of his rare, guarded interviews, he once said, "I'm not trying to become someone else. I'm trying to become the best version of myself." And yet, somewhere along that path, the boundary between improvement and self-erasure quietly disappeared. By the early 1980s, Michael had begun a sequence of cosmetic procedures that, according to later medical estimates, likely numbered well into the double digits, large and small adjustments to his nose, chin, cheekbones, and skin. What began as modest corrections after a stage accident gradually evolved into a pattern that seemed impossible to stop. Physicians who worked with him recalled how, after each procedure, Michael would stand silently before the mirror, studying his face with the intensity of a painter judging a canvas. Only this canvas never felt complete. "Just a little more," he would say. "It's not right yet." And so the cycle repeated. Another consultation, another incision. One surgeon later shared that Michael kept photographs of himself from different eras of his life, carefully cataloged. He would draw on them with red ink, circling areas to refine, narrowing angles, softening contours. He wasn't seeing himself anymore, the doctor said years later. He was seeing what the world expected him to be. That single sentence captured the quiet tragedy of a man overtaken by the image he had created for others. For years, the public speculated that Michael wanted to change his race. The reality was far more painful and far less sensational. He suffered from vitiligo, a medical condition that causes the loss of skin pigment in uneven patches. Under intense stage lighting, those contrasts became impossible to hide. He relied on specialized makeup to maintain a consistent appearance. The autopsy would later confirm the diagnosis, but while he was alive, he endured ridicule, accusations, and cruel labels. His face became public property, endlessly analyzed, as if it no longer belonged to him. That scrutiny left a wound no one could see. An old friend once recalled Michael watching footage of his younger self, tears forming as he whispered, "I miss him. I don't know when he left." It was a rare moment of honesty, not mourning his former looks, but grieving the loss of feeling whole. By the mid-1980s, every appearance sparked shock. His complexion lighter, his nose slimmer, his features sharper. Each change ignited headlines, speculation, and relentless comparison. The more the world stared, the more Michael withdrew. He lived in vast rooms filled with silence, surrounded by only a few trusted companions and, reportedly, life-sized figures representing past versions of himself. Someone once said he called them the Michaels who are gone. As strange as it sounded, it was his way of holding on to pieces of himself the world seemed to have taken. Doctors later admitted that following many procedures, Michael relied on strong medication, not only for physical pain, but for the emotional toll of being wrapped in bandages. hidden from view, waiting to heal. Some days he would sit alone in the dark, classical music playing softly, trying to escape the sensation that his own face no longer felt familiar. In a note discovered later, he wrote, "I'm scared I won't recognize myself when I wake up." The pursuit of refinement became endless. Nothing was ever enough. During one interview, when questioned about his appearance, Michael smiled gently and said, "I don't know who you're talking about. I don't see what you see." It sounded evasive at the time. In hindsight, it was painfully literal. Mental health experts would later suggest that his transformations weren't about vanity, but about detachment, a deep fracture between identity and body. From childhood, his appearance had been criticized, corrected, and compared. Comments about his nose followed him for decades. When he finally had the power to change what once caused him pain, he did. But every alteration revealed a new insecurity waiting beneath the surface. No one can say exactly when control slipped away. Some point to the aftermath of Thriller, others to the vitiligo diagnosis, but wherever it began, the outcome was the same. Michael became confined by the image he believed he needed to survive. He once told a friend, "If I stop changing, they'll see I'm not the same, and then they'll leave." Beneath that sentence lived a devastating fear, not of criticism, but of abandonment. For Michael, love from the audience wasn't optional. It was oxygen. Each surgery took more from him. Pain accumulated, scars multiplied. Still, he continued, "I just want to be beautiful." He once said, "I want people to be amazed when I walk on stage." They were, but not always in the way he hoped. At one appointment, a doctor finally said, "Michael, you have to stop." Michael smiled softly. "I know," he replied, "but I can't." It may have been the most honest thing he ever said. Behind the title King of Pop was a man slowly fading. The world saw the performances, never the solitude. He believed perfection would bring love. Yet the closer he reached for it, the more distant he became. The more he reshaped his image, the more he lost the humanity people once connected to. In private moments, long after the applause faded, Michael would look through old photographs, faces he once believed were flawed, now painfully precious. Perhaps all he wanted, in the end, was one last glimpse of the boy untouched by expectation. But time does not reverse. And somewhere along the way, the man in the mirror became a stranger. Michael Jackson, an icon built on permanence, was left with a quiet, unmovable truth. Fame can fill stadiums, but it can also leave a person profoundly, devastatingly alone. When the applause finally dissolved into silence and the arena emptied, Michael Jackson would slip away from the stage and retreat into solitude. The lights were gone. The music had faded. What remained was a quiet room, the steady ticking of a clock, and the sterile scent of medicine lingering in the air. In that space, the King of Pop ceased to exist. What remained was a body worn thin, shaking, fragile, and utterly depleted. Few ever realized that beneath the explosive choreography and seemingly effortless movement was a physical frame slowly giving way. The world saw triumph. It did not see the private battle being fought under his pale, carefully maintained exterior. Beneath that surface lay a relentless struggle with pain, exhaustion, and dependency. The findings released later were sobering. Traces of strong sedatives and anesthetics, substances normally reserved for controlled medical environments, had become part of his daily reality. Physicians would later explain that prolonged exposure to such drugs was perilous, especially for a body repeatedly subjected to trauma. Michael had learned to live at the edge of pain and unconsciousness, a boundary that once crossed offers no safe return. When investigators revealed that he weighed roughly 110 pounds near the end, disbelief spread quickly. This was the same man who once dominated stages with boundless force. Now, his frame was gaunt, ribs visible beneath fragile skin. Scars traced his body, quiet reminders of years of procedures, both major and minor. A forensic specialist later remarked that even through touch, one could sense the history etched into his skin. Wounds long healed, yet never forgotten. Those marks told a story Michael rarely voiced. The story of an artist who pursued perfection without pause, even as his health steadily eroded. He did not lack fear of pain, he feared failure more. Pain became the price he accepted to preserve the image the world demanded of him. Those close to him noticed a ritual. When discomfort became unbearable, Michael would retreat into darkness, playing classical pieces or soft melodies, lying still for hours. Interruptions were not permitted. In those moments, he seemed absent, no longer a performer, no longer a public figure, just a man struggling to endure. One staff member later recalled hearing him murmur through a closed door late at night, "I just need to sleep, just a little peace." That simple wish carried enormous weight. Sleep, for Michael, had ceased to be natural. His body no longer knew how to rest on its own. Doctors warned that sustained reliance on medication had weakened his ability to recover, placing immense strain on his nervous and cardiovascular systems. Each surgery compounded the damage, until medication was no longer a choice, but a necessity. There were attempts to stop. They failed. Without assistance, he could not sleep. Without rest, he could not rehearse. During one rehearsal, he nearly collapsed after only minutes on stage, requiring help to be escorted away. When asked, he offered the same quiet reassurance. "I'm okay, just tired." It was a phrase he repeated often, long after it ceased to be true. A member of his inner circle once described days when Michael spoke to no one. He would sit alone in his dressing room, hands wrapped in bandages, eyes fixed on his reflection. When interrupted, he would say softly, "I'm fixing something." On the inside, only later did they understand. His body bore scars far beyond his face, across his chest, arms, and shoulders, evidence of years of invasive treatments. For many, cosmetic surgery represents enhancement. For Michael, it became something closer to penance. Each procedure carried the hope of happiness, of acceptance. Instead, it deepened a wound that never fully closed. People often said he hid behind a mask, but the truth was more unsettling. The mask was not removable. It was skin and bone, shaped by pain and expectation, inseparable from the man beneath. He did not wear the image. He became it. And still, when the lights came up, the audience saw brilliance, a smile, a voice that soared. They did not see the pain embedded in every step. Every turn, Michael believed they came to witness greatness, not weakness, and he refused to let the illusion fracture, even as it drained what little strength he had left. A close friend once said, Michael never allowed himself to appear weak. He was terrified that if he did, the crown would disappear. So he concealed everything, the medication, the suffering, the isolation beneath a surface as delicate as porcelain. Looking back, that image has become a symbol of quiet tragedy, a man perpetually fleeing his own body. Under the spotlight, he was immortal. In the darkness, he was simply human, grappling with pain no one else could see. It was not beauty that claimed Michael Jackson. It was the relentless pursuit of it. Beauty became his confinement, and he endured it with the gentle smile the world remembers. And when the powder was finally brushed away, when the lights dimmed for the last time, what remained was the real Michael, frail, silent, and still holding on to the hope that somewhere, in some version of life, he might be loved without having to be perfect. Some truths don't emerge from rumors or recollections. They come from numbers, measurements, and the unyielding language of an official report. On June 25, 2009, when news broke that Michael Jackson had died, the world responded with shock and grief. But it was only later, when the autopsy findings were released, that the full weight of his final years became impossible to ignore. What those pages revealed was not spectacle or scandal, but a quiet devastation, a life worn down by isolation, exhaustion, and an unrelenting pursuit of relief. The report concluded that Michael Jackson died from acute intoxication caused by propofol, an anesthetic intended solely for use in operating rooms. Administered under the supervision of trained specialists, it is not a medication designed for rest, nor one meant to be present in a private bedroom. Propofol induces deep unconsciousness, separating the body from pain and awareness. For Michael, it had become something else entirely, the only doorway he believed could lead him to peace, to silence, to rest he could not otherwise reach. Medical examiners noted that his body no longer had the strength to resist. Years of dependence on sedatives, pain medication, and sleep aids had taken a toll on his heart, liver, and nervous system. When propofol entered his system, it did not merely lull him into sleep, it overwhelmed a body already stretched beyond recovery. The report described a man weighing roughly 110 pounds, with fragile muscle mass, pallid skin, and numerous scars, both recent and old, marking decades of medical intervention. Along his face, around his ears, across his chest. Those marks remained like a physical record of his lifelong pursuit of control and perfection. At one press briefing, a forensic physician offered a statement that cut through speculation with chilling clarity. There was no direct evidence that cosmetic surgery itself caused Michael Jackson's death. But the cumulative effect, the repeated procedures, and the medications used to manage their aftermath played a critical role in his physical collapse. It was not an accusation, merely an acknowledgement of reality. The cost of sustaining an image, over time, had become unbearable. Investigators also documented what was found in his private space. Prescription medications were present in abundance: sleep aids, painkillers, sedatives. On a nearby table were syringes and vials, alongside handwritten notes with only a few words visible. Sleep, peace, quiet. No one knows whether they were reminders, pleas, or simply thoughts written down in moments of desperation. What they conveyed, unmistakably, was a longing for rest that had eluded him for years. Propofol, the final substance detected, was described by experts as producing a state of complete sensory shutdown. It silences awareness. For Michael, it wasn't indulgence or excess, it was escape. Family members later shared that he suffered from relentless insomnia, sometimes going days without meaningful sleep. He tried countless alternatives. Nothing worked. Only this drug, he believed, could bring him true rest. The irony is difficult to ignore. A medication created to support healing became the means by which an exhausted artist sought refuge. Another detail from the report stunned those who read it closely. His body contained almost no subcutaneous fat, leaving little more than bone and weakened muscle. One doctor described him as looking depleted, as though life itself had been slowly drained away. It was not merely a clinical observation, but a reflection of a long internal struggle, one driven not by external harm, but by a relentless inner demand. When these findings became public, the music world fell silent. Fans who had grown up with Billie Jean, Beat It, and Thriller were forced to reconcile the image of an invincible performer with the reality of a man pushed beyond his limits. Details from his final years took on new meaning. Canceled performances attributed to fatigue, public appearances marked by masks, gloves, and sunglasses, even indoors. These were once dismissed as eccentricities. In hindsight, they were signs of a body and spirit stretched too thin to endure scrutiny any longer. Michael Jackson's death did more than provoke mourning, it demanded reflection. How does someone who seemingly had everything come to rely on medication just to find rest? Perhaps the answer lies in the report itself. Page after page recorded scars. Weakness, depletion, not just of flesh, but of resilience, though clinical in tone. The document read like an unintentional indictment of what fame can extract over time. And in the end, the world saw something different. Not just the loss of a legend, but the quiet passing of a man utterly worn down by the burden of being one. A man who gave joy to millions, yet struggled to find even a moment of peace for himself. When the noise finally fades, when the lights dim and the last echo of applause disappears, what remains is not the trophies, the record-breaking numbers, or the moments that once left crowds breathless. What remains is silence, a long, reverberating quiet that lingers in the hearts of millions who loved Michael Jackson. In that silence, there is no king of pop, no spectacle, no disguise. There is only a vulnerable human presence, laid bare, and a legacy the world continues to carry. After the autopsy findings, after the headlines, the debates, the grief, and the endless second-guessing, what ultimately stays with us is not how he died, but how he lived. Michael Jackson embodied a profound contradiction, a man who seemed to possess everything imaginable, yet spent his life searching for something more honest, more essential, something fame could never deliver, and something the spotlight could never reveal. To the public, he was a creative force without precedent, an artist who reshaped popular music and culture itself. From Thriller to Bad, from Dangerous to History, his albums weren't simply releases, they were statements. He dismantled boundaries that once seemed fixed, Race, gender, movement, sound. When his music played, labels fell away. People didn't hear categories or divisions. They heard a voice, one that felt universal, unconstrained, and deeply human. It may be that music was the only place where Michael felt truly at home, when he closed his eyes and surrendered to a song. Something authentic surfaced in those moments. He wasn't performing, he was revealing. Each lyric sounded like a piece of himself finding refuge. In a 2002 interview, he said, "It's the soul that matters, not the skin." At the time, it sounded like a gentle rebuttal to public scrutiny. Today, it reads like a quiet manifesto, a life spent proving that art transcends appearance, identity, and borders. What often goes unspoken is how Michael responded to judgment. He didn't return cruelty with anger. Instead, he answered with generosity. He gave vast sums to children's charities, hospitals, and humanitarian causes. He visited the sick without cameras, held hands, offered comfort, and sang softly at bedsides. Music, for him, wasn't just expression, it was medicine. When he sang "Heal the World," it felt less like a message to humanity and more like a personal prayer. There's a place in your heart. Perhaps those words carried the peace his everyday life denied him. People are quick to call Michael Jackson a symbol of brilliance. Fewer are willing to acknowledge that he was also a symbol of suffering. His life unfolded as a series of opposing forces: joy and fear, visibility and retreat, devotion and isolation. He loved the audience, yet feared the judgment that came with being seen. He longed to be understood. In that tension, he became one of the defining figures of the modern era, a man consumed by the perfection he believed was required to survive. The cost of that perfection was immense. It wasn't only his health or his changing appearance, it was the gradual erosion of his ability to simply exist as himself. In an industry that magnifies every flaw, he constructed an eternal version of Michael Jackson. To preserve it, he sacrificed pieces of the man behind it. Each procedure, each sleepless night, each forced smile became a quiet exchange. Humanity traded for legend. Yet, that very fragility is what made him resonate so deeply. In his brokenness, people recognized something of themselves. When Man in the Mirror played, the world stopped. If you want to make the world a better place, the line feels almost prophetic now. A man who spent years trying to change himself ultimately forced society to confront its own reflection. What do we demand of the people we idolize? After he was gone, something shifted. The silence he left behind was unmistakable. Candlelight vigils filled streets. Voices joined together, singing, "You are not alone." It wasn't just remembrance, it was regret. A quiet admission that the world admired the symbol, but overlooked the human being beneath it. Time has passed, yet he remains present. Every time Earth Song swells, every time a crowd echoes Shimone, Michael returns not in form, but in feeling. That is the truest kind of immortality. To be absent, yet still capable of making the world pause and listen. In the end, Michael Jackson was more than a star. He was a reminder of how greatness can elevate and how it can also consume. He burned brightly, fractured under the weight, and somehow became a guiding light for those who followed. And maybe, somewhere beyond the reach of cameras and expectations, beyond the roar of crowds, Michael has finally found what he sought all along: quiet, rest, and peace. Michael Jackson left behind far more than a catalog of unforgettable songs. He left a lingering question: where does the man end, and where does the legend begin? His life was marked by devotion, resilience, sacrifice, and a relentless pursuit of an ideal that ultimately cost him more than the world ever realized. It is a story that inspires awe, yet carries a deep sense of sorrow. Beneath the brilliance and spectacle was a vulnerable human being, yearning to be seen and valued not for an image, but for the sincerity of his heart. Perhaps that was the truest version of Michael, the man who spent his life struggling to remain himself. If this story resonated with you, take a moment to share your thoughts in the comments. Leave a like and subscribe to continue uncovering the human stories behind history's most enduring icons. Because behind every legend we admire, there is always a human life that came first.